All right, hello YouTube. Welcome to the final episode of 2023 for Geekery Abides. That this will be episode 24. Ready to go. I didn't expect necessarily to have too much of a listening audience. I know it's New Year's Eve. This was obviously not a planned time to do the episode. I had planned to do it a few days ago. I'll get into that as soon as I do the intro, though, because I want to share everything with the podcast group as well as the live stream people, or if you're watching in the future, since it doesn't look like there's anybody in the live stream currently. So let me go ahead and hit the intro and get started.
He who is ashamed of his geekery has forgotten the face of Stan Lee.
This is the podcast, Geekery Abides.
Hello and welcome to Geekery Abides. My name is Tad, and I am here for episode 23, the final episode of 2023. And obviously, unless I was to record later again tonight, there'd be no way to do another show in 2023 because it is indeed New Year's Eve. So let me go ahead before I even dive into the announcements, or I guess not really announcements, but the email and the intro, that kind of stuff. I wanted to just tell everyone why I'm here a little bit late. If you were not on if you're not following the Dark Tower show, because the show is planning on. I wanted to test out a couple different ways of doing things. I don't necessarily want to keep bunching these two shows back to back. That's getting a little bit taxing on the old vocal cords. So I was going to test a few different ideas and whatever. And one idea I've had is, Saturday afternoon is generally where we've always recorded Dark Tower Palaver. And my thought process was maybe Friday night record Geekery Abides. The other option would be, I guess like this would be the next day. But I usually have a lot more going on Sunday. Socially and all that kind of stuff. So Sunday's probably not going to work in a normal sense. But I do think that it worked now as just kind of a, whatever. But then, so Friday night, and the other option I might look at is Saturday night, rather than, basically do Dark Tower in the afternoon and then in the evening, a number of hours later, give me a break between shows and then do that. But I kind of like the idea of maybe doing it Friday night. So I will test that out next episode. But for this one, what ended up happening was I woke up Friday morning and everything was fine. But then shortly as I wasn't even out of bed yet, I was just browsing at stuff on my phone when suddenly my internet went out. I assumed like normal, it was just like a router issue. It happens every once in a while. You do have to reset your routers, and everyone tends to neglect that. So I went down, reset it and stuff. Nothing worked. Went through all the troubleshooting, nothing worked. Ended up having to reach out to my ISP, my internet service provider, and they said something was up. They couldn't do anything from their end, so they'd have to get a tech out. They originally told me that they wouldn't be able to get someone out till the 2nd. I said that's ridiculous. So they just did whatever, and then they got me someone out the next day, which was yesterday. But that meant that I was out of internet basically from Friday morning up until Saturday morning, or Saturday after. It was almost afternoonish by the time the guys finally showed up. So that was that kind of obviously kiboshed the idea of doing a show Friday night. So that is what happened there. The tech ended up finding there was an issue with the pole where my fiber line comes from the pole to my house. He said there was a wire disconnected, and he speculated that maybe it was some sort of squirrel or small vermin that may have chewed the wire or something, because it looked like it was just kind of disconnected, not in a normal, natural way. So that is what happened. And then I also want to let everyone know I am, you know what? I forgot to start recording. Okay. Well, we're in the middle of the announcements now. I did start the recording. I thought I did that already, but apparently it didn't start. But I'm recording this as well because when I woke up this morning, the internet was out again. It did come back on its own. It's been on for a number of hours now, but I am recording in case something drops out. Internet is in the middle of the live stream. That's always one of the biggest paranoias of doing live streams for me. But up until now, these last couple days, in the couple years I've had this internet service provider and fiber internet, I've not really had any issues. So knock on wood, that holds up. And this is a one-time fluke. And it won't have any issues here on the live stream. But in case there is, I'm glad I said that and checked again, because apparently the recording had stopped. So the recording will be midway in, but ultimately I haven't even taken a dive into the show yet. So if you're seeing this video and I just started randomly in the middle of a thought, and you didn't hear the intro and stuff, it's because the live stream crapped out and I had to just delete it and then post this recorded, because I'm recording as well as live stream at the same time. I just forgot to do it at the beginning, so sorry about that if that is what you're seeing. Hopefully you're not seeing that though, and only that. Hopefully you heard the opening theme and everything. That means that everything worked fine. So going on into the stuff, if you want to contact the show, you can do that in any number of ways. Well, actually, there's one main way for this show. I'm getting in my head here to talk like the other show. For this one, the main way to contact the show is email. Go ahead and shoot me an email. My name is Tad. Of course, you know that. But it is spelled T-A-D-D, which you may not know. It gets misspelled a lot. So if you go Tad, T-A-D-D, at geekeryabides.com, you will get an email over to me. Like last episode, Mike sent an email, and I was able to kind of go through his list with the Christmas movies. So if you want to do an email like that, or if you have a show idea for a topic, or just you want to give some feedback on something I talked about, or you want to tell me what you're geeking out about, whatever it is, the email line is open. It's over at tad@geekeryabides.com if you want to contact the show. Oh, I guess I can always change the slide so it actually shows on the damn screen too. That's the other thing, is this streaming software. I've got two screens. It shows me like the one that's coming up, the on deck screen, I guess, and then the one that it's actually recording. And so sometimes I lock onto the wrong screen and think that my screen is right when it indeed is not. So that is the email, tad@geekeryabides.com. Tad is T-A-D-D. Next up, watching, playing, reading. I keep wanting to say listening now all of a sudden. I don't know why that's new thing has entered my mind. I guess I have been listening to a lot of music recently. So watching, reading, playing. So playing, I'll go backwards. Playing, I've just been playing MLB The Show 2023, just like last week. I guess it's only been a week, hasn't it, since the last time we recorded, because there was the delay. So I think it was the 23rd that we recorded. So it hasn't been long. So pretty much just still watching it, or we're playing MLB The Show. Reading, I did finish The Running Man, and now I'm reading Roadwork, another Stephen Bachman novel. So that's all I'm reading currently. And then watching, I wanted to do less because I have a lot more that I'm watching. So I am still binging through Seinfeld. I'm into the second to last season. But then I have gone on a tear here at the tail end of the year, watching a shitload of movies. So I did end up watching The Santa Claus after our conversation in the last episode of Geekery Abides. I finished the episode and it was Christmas Eve. So over the course of Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve, I watched both The Santa Claus and then Christmas Vacation. I had intended to watch like The Grinch and Jingle All the Way, some of my all-time favorites, but never got around to it as the days progressed. But I did watch Christmas Vacation, National Lampoons, and then The Santa Claus with Tim Allen, which I hadn't seen in a long time. In fact, I was telling someone, I can't remember, I think it was Hayden came over, and I was talking to him about it, and he was asking me, like, oh, what'd you think? You haven't seen the Santa Claus in a lot of years. I'm like, yeah, man, the special effects on the reindeer and the sleigh are really, really rough by modern standards. And the last time I watched it, that wasn't even a thought that entered my mind. So it would have been when those special effects like that were normalized. So that would have probably been in the 90s last time I watched that movie. And then tangents, because tangents are always a wonderful thing. That's the one thing I want to point out, too, is I watch movies like that, or like the original Jumanji. There's all these movies that are, from my childhood and stuff, and a lot of people's childhood. The special effects, I mean, there are certainly some where special effects are absolutely stunning. Any horror movie with Tom Savini, stuff like that, it's always great. But there's a lot of stuff out there where, technology, whether it's like the weird falling thing they did, where it was like you can just tell the guy wasn't really falling, and it was like some weird screen thing moving, and a number of things have used that effect. There's the stop motion animation, there's the like insert stuff like the Santa sleigh and the Santa Claus. There's all this like shitty stuff in the old days that's really bad, but then it's funny because we all just pretend, or not all of us, but a lot of people pretend like, you know, CG is just this abhorrent thing, and often it looks so terrible and so fake. And I'm like looking back at some of these older movies with the old school styles, pre-CG special effects, and I'm seeing some pretty heinous things. And it's like, it's funny that I don't know if people just latch on to like the, you know, the dozen movies that have been made of old school special effects that are like the absolute cream of the crop, and then ignoring like a lot of really shitty stuff, or they haven't revisited the movies. It's just funny because people are always shitting on CG, but I would say that, you know, CG, even when it isn't the absolute best, it's still equivalent, if not better, than some of the not great special effects of the days of old. I don't know, maybe the reason for that is forgetting it, or rose-colored glasses of the old days when it wasn't great, or if it even just comes down to just kind of knowing that in the old days you just accepted movie magic, you know, sometimes didn't look the best. I don't know if it's that, and then with CG, we've seen a couple of examples of CG that are so good. I wonder if we just expect, you know, photorealistic, absolutely indiscernible from any kind of effect, or from something that's real, and we just expect that. So then when it doesn't happen, we just get really nasty about CG. I don't know. It was just a thought I had. And then I've been listening to a lot of the Beatles recently. I think I may have mentioned that in the last episode. So I actually found the documentary from the last decade, 2015, 2016. I think it was 2016, and it's the Beatles 8 days a week, and it was actually put together by it's kind of a documentary covering their touring days. So right before, I mean, they shut down touring toward the tail end of their records, and they basically, you know, that's when they started getting more experimental and crazy, when they didn't have to tour anymore and do concerts, because if they were just living in the studio and creating records, all the music they were creating was stuff they didn't have to worry about, how are we going to perform this live. That's how you got some of those brilliant albums later on, is because they gave up touring, because basically all the screaming girls were screaming so loud that hardly anyone could ever hear the damn music in most of those concerts anyway. But I watched that documentary. It was a really good documentary. Again, like I said, Ron Howard did it. Also, I don't know if I found it on streaming somewhere, but there's also one I heard about that was done probably in the last decade, and it was by Martin Scorsese, and he did a documentary on George Harrison. So through that, there's also going to be some Beatles stuff in there. I need to watch that at some point. That'd be really cool. I love the idea of these, like, you know, these masterful filmmakers doing documentaries. And then I jumped into HBO Max and hit a couple animated DC shows. I watched All-Star Superman, which is a comic that I've read. It's one where Superman is entrapped by Lex Luthor to save some people that are, for some reason, they're taking a manned probe to the sun, which doesn't make any sense in the real world, but it's a comic book. And then Lex Luthor set it up, though, because he had basically done the calculations to find that if Superman was so close to the surface of the sun, even though it normally powers him, that it would overwhelm his genetic code, which it does. So basically, Superman is told he's terminal. He's not going to live much longer. And it's basically this whole story is kind of what he does kind of in his closing final period of time. It was a decent comic, and the animated movie was really good. I think it was done in like 2009, so it's not even that new. And then I watched also Superman / Batman Public Enemies. This is also a really cool comic that I read, and I found the animated movie, decided I wanted to watch it. It's basically Lex Luthor as president, and I can't remember what he does. He does something that makes Superman a criminal, and then Batman obviously helps him, and then so they both become like wanted fugitives, and they have like different heroes chasing after them, and it's kind of a cool team up of the two characters. So that was a lot of fun. I also, on HBO Max, watched Barbie, finally. I missed that back in theaters, the Greta Gerwig movie. I mean, obviously everyone knows Barbie. It was one of the bigger movies of the year. But I wanted to see it back then, but I just didn't get a chance. And then I had heard right toward the tail end of Barbie's theatrical run that they were going to put it out in November, and they were actually going to do IMAX because it didn't get any IMAX screens because of Oppenheimer. And they said that they would maybe throw like a deleted scene in there or something. So there was like that whole thing they were saying. So I was like, cool, I don't have to worry about like getting those last couple weeks to go out and see it. I'll just go see it in November. But then it never actually came, at least nowhere near me. And I don't remember ever hearing that it actually did come along. So unfortunately, I had to watch it on streaming. But I did finally watch that and enjoyed it. I could definitely see why everyone loved it. Of course, I'm not a kid that grew up playing with Barbie, so I don't know if it meant as much to me as it did to some people. But I did really enjoy the movie. I thought it was pretty well done. Greta Gerwig's one I'm a huge fan of, so I figured she'd do a great job. Then I also watched streamed Gran Turismo, which is another one that I missed earlier in the year. It is the movie based on the true story of the this program they did where they found the top 20 Gran Turismo players. It's a PlayStation game that was. It's not even like a game. It's actually like a simulator. I remember playing the original one back on PS2 or PS1 a long time ago, for sure. I was like a teenager, young teenager, playing the original Gran Turismo, and I never liked it because it was always so hard. And in retrospect, it was so hard because I was playing on a paddle and not or a controller and not like a steering wheel or whatever. But it's just not optimized. It's not like like a lot of video game stuff makes things easier on you, and it doesn't for Gran Turismo. It legit handles like it would be a real car, and that's the whole idea. Is it was a simulator, not a game. And so they found the top 20 people. They had them go through this academy with the idea of a publicity stunt of getting someone from that program, and then they were going to actually enter them into real races. And they ended up doing that, and it's a true story. Actually, the guy that it was based on did his own stunt driving in the movie. So he didn't play himself, obviously. They had an actor doing that, but he did his own stunt driving. So that was actually a really fun movie. It has the Hopper from Stranger Things, the actor. He was the one of the main guys. I also had Orlando Bloom, which makes you feel old if you're of my age group that grew up on the Lord of the Rings stuff. And Orlando Bloom always looked like the young guy. In this one, he kind of looks like a grizzled older guy, which is kind of strange. I mean, I know age happens, but I know some of us. I feels like it's kind of like with family. If you don't, there's certain family members that don't live near you, and you don't see them very often. I feel like we just stick them at a certain age in our head, and then you see them again a whole lot later, and it's like suddenly they're older, and it's like, holy shit, that's not right. And I feel like we do that with actors too, especially if you don't see them in as much. If they're not like Tom Cruise or someone that's in a movie seemingly every year, I haven't seen Orlando Bloom in a lot since the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff, and at those he still kind of looked like Lord of the Rings days. But Gran Turismo, he looked older. And then I also watched. I actually went to theaters and saw The Iron Claw. That is the new movie based on the Von Erich family that was in the professional wrestling realm. This was actually a really awesome movie. I would highly recommend it to anyone, even if you're not a wrestling fan. I haven't really been a wrestling. I was a huge wrestling fan in the 90s when I was like 14 or whatever, kind of in the height of the of wrestling's popularity, really in the late 90s. I was into it really then, but I kind of fell off as the turn of the century happened. I haven't really been into it. I appreciate kind of what it is, but I don't really have a taste for a lot of what's out there anymore. But I even just being a wrestling fan back in the day, I always kind of knew there's the Von Erich curse. This family was always said to be cursed, and like a lot of horrible things happened. So going into this movie, I kind of knew this was going to be a sad movie, and it was. The first half didn't seem like it, but the last half, it felt like you're getting punched in the face the whole time. And the really big one here is Zac Efron. I walking out of this, I remember thinking to myself, if the Academy Awards was a legitimate thing, because I mean, I don't want to say it's not legitimate entirely, but there's like a whole idea of like there's snubs that happen, but there's also like campaigning where like some companies and studios campaign really hard for someone to get Oscar nominated, and other ones don't, and sometimes that actually does persuade who does and doesn't. If it was just a straight up legitimate thing for like the best actors, I guarantee you that Zac Efron would get nominated, and he would have a good chance of winning, because he turned a really, really good role in this. The last scene with him was absolutely like heartbreaking and devastating the way he played, and he played it perfectly. It wasn't done with like, there wasn't like a lot of music and a lot of other stuff to like prop him up. It was all on his shoulders as an actor, and he absolutely fucking crushed it. So Zac Efron, I think I posted on social media, Zac Efron is the modern day Leonardo DiCaprio. I think DiCaprio, there's a lot of us back in the day, I mean, I was a kid, but I remember writing DiCaprio off because he was just this teenage heartthrob, you know, all the girls like to look at, but you know, you just assume that someone like that doesn't have that much talent. But then as he got into his 20s and 30s, he obviously started taking a lot of challenging roles, and then proved that he is one of the best actors in Hollywood. And I think Zac Efron's right on that same realm. He was the heartthrob back in the High School Musicals or whatever. That's the name of that Disney show I think that he was in. And so a lot of us wrote him off on that. But then over this last number of years in his 20s, he's been doing things like he did the Ted Bundy movie. He did I know he was the dad in the Firestarter movie. If you're on the Dark Tower Palaver side, we all kind of know that one wasn't the best movie, even though he did a good job. The Greatest Showman, he's done stuff, but this one really felt like a tour de force for him acting wise. And like I said, even if you're not a wrestling fan, this is more of a movie about a family. That's the main idea of it, is it's about the family, and they just so happen to be wrestlers. So if you're not a wrestling fan, this isn't a movie made for wrestling fans. It's kind of like the old movie The Wrestler with the oh god, what was his name, Mickey Rourke, that ended up was in the Academy Award realm. Like, that was just a brilliant movie, kind of about aging, and you know, whatever. It had a lot going on. It just so happened that he was a wrestler. This is the same kind of thing. So don't write this movie off if you're not a wrestling fan. Like I said, I'm 20 something years removed from being a wrestling fan, and I went into this not as a wrestling fan, but because I heard it was a really great movie. And yeah, I really thought it was. And then I also went and saw Ferrari, the new Michael Mann movie with Adam Driver. It's about Enzo Ferrari. This one wasn't bad, I guess. Definitely not as good as I thought it would be. Michael Mann, you know, he did like Heat. He's done a lot of incredible movies. So I was kind of hoping that, you know, he would just kind of knock it out of the park with this one. And I thought this was a little bit more middle of the road. I'd say maybe a 6 out of 10 type movie. There was some elements that were really good. The one thing I would call out, though, Adam Driver is the star is Enzo Ferrari. But oh god, I just blanked on her name. God damn it, I've been tweeting about her on my personal social media. Penelope Cruz. Finally, I remember it without having to Google it. Penelope Cruz plays his wife, and she absolutely stole the movie. She was the best. She killed it. Scene chewing, just absolutely incredible. And yeah, it's kind of about the early days when Ferrari was, you know, doing some races with some of his cars. And yeah, there's some pretty rough stuff in here. That's one of the roughest things I've seen this year, was actually in this movie, a scene in this movie. So yeah, it was decent, and it was worth a watch. I just wouldn't like flock out to see it, but it was kind of like Napoleon. You know, I expected it to be way better than it turned out being. Not to say that it's bad. It just I expected maybe like a 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 type movie, and it was like a 6 out of 10. So still above average in my mind, but you know, and Michael Mann's always worth a watch at least once. But it was, you know, I was hoping for like an absolute banger. And then of course I am still binging through Seinfeld. I'm on the second to last season of that show. Did I already say that? Maybe. That feels familiar, but either way, yeah, I'm still binging through Seinfeld as well. So those are my watching, reading, playing. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the news. I am going to start off here with a sad one. Unfortunately, let me get my screen bigger here. I'm having a hard time reading. It's because I forgot to turn my size up. So Lee Sun-kyun has unfortunately passed away. He died he committed suicide, unfortunately. This one kind of, and I don't want to get into this too heavily because it's a geek show, not about society at large or whatever, and this isn't even American society, this is South Korea. But he played the rich dad in Parasite. He did a wonderful job in that. But he basically killed himself because there's been accusations in South Korea that he was using illegal drugs, and the way that they were harassing him and stuff, he eventually just went and killed himself. And all I can say is absolutely shame on South Korea and shame on any country that has laws against what adults can and can't do with chemicals, because I've never used a drug in my life. I have some stuff in my past that makes me kind of hate drugs. I was hurt by drugs early in my life, not by me, but indirectly. I've never done a drug in my life because of my past, so I don't say this as like a dude that wants to like legalize drugs because, whatever, for my own personal benefits, but I just see it from a societal thing. I think the drug laws are far more damaging and destructive than the drugs themselves. And I don't want to get too deep into this because it's a geek thing, but it's absolutely terrifying to see such a brilliant and talented and young person. I think he's only probably in his 40s, maybe 50s. I didn't actually see an age when I was seeing the headlines. He was born in 75, so yeah, definitely not that old. Not even 50 yet. So yeah, in his 40s. So it's just sad, and I don't want to get on a soapbox or anything, but I don't know. It just seems to me like if a government is going to allow people to smoke and drink and eat food that isn't the best for them, whatever. Like, we have, as adults, we could make decisions sort of to criminalize choices, so much so, and getting to the point where basically his life was ruined because the government was coming after him for such a stupid reason. For him to then kill himself is absolutely fucking terrifying. So shame on governments for that kind of stuff, especially South Korea in this case. And for Lee Sun-kyun,
good night, sweet prince.
very sad. All right, so next up, a lighter bit of news. So Twisters is the upcoming film in 2024. I'll be talking about it in a minute. Or wait, actually, I don't know if it made my list, actually. I don't think it did. I think it just missed my list. But Twisters is a follow-up to Twister. There's been all kinds of rumors since this movie was announced that it was going to be a reboot, it was going to be a sequel, it was going to be a remake. There's been all kinds of rumors. But the director has now come out and said that the movie is entirely original, and it has nothing. I mean, I don't know if he necessarily said it has nothing to do with the original, but it's not like a remake or a reboot or anything like that. The director is Glenn Powell, and his most recent triumph was he was the director of Top Gun Maverick. So great job to him on that, because that was a great movie. Wait a minute, that was Top Gun Maverick. That was 2021, right? Or 2022, I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant. Not this year. I was like, suddenly I had like this flash in my mind where I'm like, wait a minute. We were talking about, I'm going to review what happened in 2023, and Top Gun Maverick. Suddenly it frightened me that maybe I missed that somehow. But no, that was a year prior, or last year, because we're still not into 2024 yet. So it's not this year. So Glenn Powell, here's the quote. He says, "We just wrapped it a couple nights ago. It's definitely not a reboot. We're not trying to recreate the story from the first one. It's a completely original story. There are no characters from the original movie back, so it's not really a continuation." So I guess, yeah, it's not even a continuation. It's because I think there was also some rumors that maybe it'd be like Bill Paxton's kids or something, that was in the original. Of course, Bill Paxton isn't with us anymore. Neither is Philip Seymour Hoffman, that played a role in that. There's been a few people passed from that movie, unfortunately. He goes on and says it's just its own standalone story in the modern day. I don't think anyone has brought up this movie, or I don't think anyone has brought up this movie in forever. But talking to people, they're like, and then this is like him, talking through some imaginary person's mouth. Quote, "That was one of my favorite movies growing up. That movie terrified me." And that's the end of his little fake quote. And then he goes on and says, "When I was working on Top Gun, Tom Cruise brought up a really interesting thing where he's like, quote, if you really want to make a movie of a certain size and scope and scale, you have to figure out what can connect with everyone around the world in every territory." And then he goes on and he says, "And humans versus weather is a very universal idea. How powerless we really are in the face of these cataclysmic forces." So I'm a massive fan of the original Twister. This is one of those ones I owned on VHS as a kid and watched countless times. Like, this movie was incredible. I loved it. I haven't watched it in a couple of years. It's probably been since the early 2000s, probably the aughts, like 2 decades ago, I guess now. But since the last time I watched it, I did watch it as an adult, like beyond high school, but maybe once is all. But I grew up watching the shit out of it. It's just a fun movie. From the Stephen King fandom, there's also the shots from The Shining. So Bill Paxton, is it Helen Hunt in it? Twister. I know Hunt is the lady's last name. No, not Twisters. That's this new one. Twister, 1996. Helen Hunt. Yeah, okay. I don't know why I was thinking it wasn't Helen Hunt, but Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton, Carrie Elwes, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Alan Ruck. He's kind of one of those dudes that just keeps on going. There's a lot of other people in it, but it's just a wonderful movie. I absolutely adored it back in the day, and I still think it's a great movie. I would love to maybe revisit it at some point. So I can't wait for Twisters coming up next year. That's kind of one that does sound like it could be a really fun movie. Next up, okay. Yes, next up, we have a rumor that Fantastic Four is going to be allegedly starting shooting in May. Of course, it's funny, as I was doing some digging around on this, because I felt like we had, when we covered the potential castings, there was the Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, I can't remember the other two. The one was a guy from The Bear for Ben Grimm, and then that was the metalhead from the last season of Stranger Things, the previous season, not the last season, because that's not out yet. But the metalhead Eddie from the fourth season, I think it was, of Stranger Things, as Johnny Storm. A lot of those were all still rumors, and the rumor was the announcement was going to be coming pretty quick. In fact, I think when we covered it, it was supposed to come the next week. It did not ever come. As I was reading through some stuff recently on this, I did see something saying that Pedro Pascal was confirmed, but I have not seen anything or couldn't find anything that was actually official saying that he's confirmed as Reed Richards. So I would hope, if we're going to start filming in May, at some point, if this is true and it does start shooting in May, there's no way they don't already have this cast. There's no way they don't already have these people all signed. We also need to know who's playing the villain. We need to know if it is Doctor Doom. There's been a lot of rumors on that as well. The last rumor I heard was Cillian Murphy is one that they're potentially looking at, but that's all rumor. There's nothing solid there. He's obviously about to enter the Oscar campaign for his Oppenheimer role, so who knows if it's even something that he would sign up for. But yeah, if it begins shooting in May, though, it feels to me like some casting announcements will be happening here very, very soon. And if not, it would just be come May, they would just start leaking, like, oh, so-and-so's at this studio where they're filming Fantastic Four. So it just seems like we got to start hearing something soon, I think. So that's exciting, though. Hopefully that's true, and it does actually start filming here very soon. Okay, next up. We've got Christopher Nolan talking about Zack Snyder. This was actually kind of interesting. Zack Snyder's obviously very polarizing. Some people absolutely love and adore him. Some people don't like him. Some people, everyone seems to have extreme views when it comes to Zack Snyder. I personally, he's very talented, but his style doesn't really fit my liking, so I'm not going to say I dislike him. I dislike him. He's just not for me, type thing. It's kind of how I view it. Like, I totally understand that people love him and love his style, but I don't know, outside of like 300, I don't know if there's ever been a movie of his I've watched I've really enjoyed. And even 300, the stylized nature of it kind of rubbed me the wrong way a tiny bit, but that's probably the only one that I've really enjoyed. Beyond that, all of his other stuff just rubs me, the style rubs me wrong. And it's not that it's bad. Again, it's kind of a, it's kind of like I almost said Wes Craven. That would be incorrect. Wes Anderson, is that his name? The dude that does all the hipster movies that are all like super, stylized and color, like with all those like very vibrant colors and stuff. I think it's Wes Anderson. That doesn't sound right for some reason. Like him, very talented dude. I have a lot of friends that love him. His style, it just doesn't appeal to me. I've tried a couple of his movies. They just don't do it for me. And that's not that's not me saying that he's not a very, very, very talented person. But it seems like when you have someone that's very stylized, their style is either going to really attract people or not. And for me, there's guys like Zack Snyder. His style just isn't for me. It's not it's not my bag. But Christopher Nolan, diving into the fray of all the online arguments, was Zack Snyder. He says there is no superhero science fiction film coming out these days where I don't see some influence of Zack. When you watch a Zack Snyder film, you see and feel his love for the potential of cinema, the potential of it to be fantastical, to be heightened in its reality, but to move you and to excite you. So this is just kind of cool because I always love these kind of things, especially very quiet filmmakers like Christopher Nolan that you don't really hear a lot from him. He doesn't do a lot. It feels like every time he's doing press for a movie, like I remember watching some stuff that he did for Oppenheimer, and it felt like it was like pulling teeth. I just don't feel like he's comfortable talking. Maybe that's an interview thing, but I feel like outside of like people he knows, he just seems like kind of an introvert. So I for people like that come off a little bit more mysterious, it's always interesting to me when they chime in on their tastes. And this is kind of one of those things. I just never would have guessed what Nolan liked, really. Like, he's so interesting in his own style that I just don't know if I pictured like. And there's also the idea that some of these people just don't really look at their contemporaries with the same kind of respect as they look at people they grew up watching. You always hear, whenever you hear like Martin Scorsese talk, I always hear him talking about, movie directors from the 1940s and 50s, like people when he was younger. I don't often hear like, and not to say he doesn't, because he does. There's actually been a few recently where Scorsese's given some props to younger directors, and that kind of stuff just is awesome. It's really exciting for me because it just shows like, oh yeah, like these guys, even though they're some of the best directors in Hollywood, they're still film fans as well. So it's really cool to hear them chime in on opinions with other filmmakers. Next up, we've got Superman Legacy is apparently being filmed in March. So that one should be filming here in the next couple months, it sounds like, which sounds totally correct. Again, just to use that as a comparison to Fantastic Four, if that is indeed shooting in May, that's only a couple months ahead of it. But with Superman Legacy, we basically know the entire cast at this point. So that just kind of shows you the difference there. But then there was a log line that came out. It turns out it's fake. And the log line that was fake was Superman, a cub reporter in Metropolis, embarks on a journey to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing as Clark Kent. And James Gunn actually tweeted and said, not sure where that log line came from. I didn't write it, so it means it's not real. It has elements of truth, and he says in parentheses, obviously the things I've said, obviously based on things I've said in the past, because he has said some things, and they've definitely taken some of the stuff he's said openly and kind of mixed it into that log line, because of course the best lie is one that lies in bed next to the truth. And he goes on with his tweet and says, but I wouldn't describe the plot this way, and I wouldn't call Clark a cub reporter. He goes on and says he's a 30-year-old full-on reporter, but yeah, we shoot in March. I'm grateful every day for our production team worked their asses off to keep this thing going through the strikes. Forces impelled us to stop many times, and if we'd if we had, we'd never make the July 2025 release date for Superman Legacy. So that is his tweet on it. So yeah, indeed, that is full on confirms it will be filming in March. And even with all the strikes, it is not moving. It is still coming out in July of 25. So looking forward to that. Next up, getting close to the end of the news here, we have a big one. Mickey Mouse is entering the public domain tomorrow. This is an interesting one because the kind of the tongue-in-cheek thing I've always heard about trademark and copyright stuff, and I know there's a difference between the two, and I always get confused which is which, but the one that protects a piece of intellectual property like Mickey Mouse, there's rules about it that it's something like the life of the artist plus like 70, or it's not 70 years, but plus some period of time. And then at that point, because that's basically to protect, the artists and to make the money off of a piece of art. And then after a short period of time, or not a short period of time, but a period of time, a reasonable period of time, the character then becomes part of public domain, because at that point, I think that it was ultimately built so that you don't have these companies that, hold these copyrights in perpetuity. So Mickey Mouse, and this isn't all elements of Mickey Mouse. I know it's like Steamboat Willie, and I know there's a couple other Disney characters that came out around the same time. But the funny thing I've always heard though is that, they constantly are like manipulating the copyright laws, delaying it, because I think it's something, I can't remember what it used to be, but it's something like Mickey Mouse should have actually fell out of copyright back like 30 something years ago, like a long time ago, but it kept getting changed by the government. And the joke I always heard was Disney would never allow the law to not continue to change, to allow, because they basically never allow Mickey Mouse to enter public domain, but that they've run out of rope on that, and indeed Mickey Mouse starting tomorrow will be public domain. So again, this isn't everything. I'm sure there's been some revisions to Mickey over the years. So the Mickey Mouse you see on, like in Disneyland today, or if they actually still made Mickey Mouse movies, because I don't think they do. Not that I haven't seen a Mickey Mouse movie in ages. If they did though, the Mickey Mouse you see on screen would not necessarily be the one today wouldn't be the one to be entering public domain, but Steamboat, Mickey, whatever. So I don't know, that means that people can start doing some different twists on things. That means that the certain aspects that are in public domain are then can be used publicly and no longer belong to Disney exclusively. So that's a huge deal. Next up we have Adam Driver saying that he is not, or he basically saying that he is done with Star Wars. This has been, some people have been blowing this out of proportion a bit. I don't think this is like a, hey, Star Wars sucks, I don't want to do it anymore. But I think what it comes down to is like his character's dead. Like, of course he's done with Star Wars. Like, and if they were ever to like revisit the character, it would probably be a younger version that he couldn't play. If they wanted to do like, Kylo Ren Ben Solo when he's 12, like that can't be Adam Driver. So there's a good chance that, and that's what he's basically saying, in his mind, Star Wars is a thing in his past that he won't be revisiting. So makes total sense. And I know some people are trying to make a thing of like, oh, see, Adam doesn't like Star Wars. Why would he care? Like, his character's dead. He's done. He's moved on. Unlike Rey or some of these others, that characters are still alive, that they're going to be in future movies. Next up, this is an interesting one. Paul Giamatti wants to be a Bond villain. He said it in a recent interview. And so, I mean, honestly, he's such a talented actor. I know he does a lot of comedic stuff, but he's done some drama stuff as well. He doesn't necessarily fit in my mind as a Bond villain, but I bet you he's so talented, I bet you he could figure it out. And this kind of reminded me of another news article I saw. So there's this new, I think it's a reality show called 007 Road to a Million, and Brian Cox is involved with it. And I saw an interview with him where he basically said that when he signed up for this 007 Road to a Million, he actually thought he was signing up for the next Bond movie as well. So it sounds like Brian Cox also wants to be a Bond character, most likely a villain though. I mean, I don't think that if you're an older man, there's not really a lot of roles for you other than the villains. So I would say, whether it be Paul Giamatti or Brian Cox, sign me the fuck up. Or as Mr. Gumble would say, just hook it to my veins! So that is that one. And then the last one I have here, we actually got a teaser image from the director of the upcoming Mortal Kombat 2 movie. And this is I have it up on screen now. It is just a picture of Scorpion's spear. He posted it on Instagram. So yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 is chugging right along, and I cannot wait to see it as a huge Mortal Kombat fan. And this definitely excites me to see some Scorpion spear action. Okay, so let's jump on over to the ranking. Tier ranking. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do the damn title for it. And actually, while I was doing the editing on this, I realized, actually, I wonder if I can kind of do it on the fly. That is the nice thing with not doing it on the slideshow anymore, but doing the rankings this way. Let's see. All right, yeah, look at that. I think I can do this. So Scorpion Spear on the screen still. Let me see. I know I'm doing stuff on the fly here. There we go. All right, and then let's go ahead and change it back over. And now I have a title on there. See, that is why I wanted to change over from the slideshow. It is way easier to do it on the fly. Of course, it's a little bit awkward without having a co-host to like cover for me while I'm doing the editing. But forgive me for the small bits of silence there. But the tier ranking that I want to do today is ranking the Rebels characters. So Star Wars Rebels, I know we talked a little bit about Rebels over the course of this year. I know the Ahsoka show picked up some Rebels characters. It felt really like the fourth season of Rebels. It felt like just the continuation of Rebels, or fifth season, whatever. One, two. Yeah, I think it was 4 seasons of Rebels. And so everyone was calling Ahsoka the 5th season of Rebels. So Ahsoka was a continuation of it. Obviously, it was kind of a spiritual successor to the Clone Wars. So basically, what I did is I wanted to get a couple. Or what I want to do is rank the Rebels characters, because like we're going to be talking about movies I saw, kind of recap 2023 and also look ahead at 2024. So, but I could have done a tier ranking with something like that, but I kind of wanted to just do something original and different that didn't really tie to the topic, because I do want it to be clear that the tier ranking can be part of the main topic, but it could also be its own thing separate from the topic. And honestly, I've really done. I rewatched Rebels in preparation for Ahsoka, the show. So a couple of the rules I made, there's obviously a lot of characters in Rebels. There's a lot of minor characters. There's also a number of characters that cross over. What my rule was is I wanted to really judge the characters based off of the actual Rebels appearance. So, but also there's a couple characters. I will tell you the Darths, Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, the Emperor Palpatine, as well as Maul, which I know he's not a Darth anymore. All 3 of those I left them off because I feel like they're so big in their other projects that I almost felt like they're too big to count in Rebels. So, but there's some other characters that are massive in other stuff that I wanted to count here because I feel like they really brought a lot to Rebels. So I wanted to keep it somewhat tied down. I didn't want to get into like the minutia. So this one, there's only 11. And I'm just going to rank them on the tier list. Also remember, since this is only 11, this is 11 characters that I'm pulling. So don't see this as a judgment on anyone. These are ultimately characters that came to mind that I wanted to rank. When I get to the ones that cross over into other areas, I'll explain why I included them. Another one is Obi-Wan Kenobi. I didn't include. He has a small chunk in Rebels. Not even a chunk. He is in an episode or 2. Same with Yoda, showed up a few times. But I kept those ones off because I felt like they were just legacy, big, massive characters that tied to the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy. They were just showing up for small spells. Whereas with the ones I wanted to cover here were ones that felt like they were more ingrained in the actual Rebels. They were actually more tied in to what was going on through the course of the Rebels show. So let's start in the D, down in the D tier. And again, this is just my ranking. Doesn't mean anything. It's just how I rank them. So, oh yeah, I forgot. I've got to go like this and then change it. So D, I have Callus, Agent Callus. He was actually a really, really great character in this show. He starts off as an Imperial officer, but then over the course of the show, and he was actually also like somewhat tied to the genocide of Zeb's people. His people are almost entirely wiped out, and Callus was kind of somewhat complicit in that. I don't think he was like I don't remember if he was in charge of it, but he was tied to it in a way that he was obviously a big a villain, and Zeb really didn't like him. But ultimately then as the show progressed, he started to kind of see some elements of the Empire that he didn't like, and eventually he and Zeb ended up on a planet together. They helped each other, and it just kind of started to help him see beyond the Imperial brainwashing, and eventually by the end he actually betrays the Empire and joins the rebellion. It ends up being a kind of a cool redemption story inside of Rebels. He's pretty awesome. He was a great villain, and then he also turned into a great redeemed character. So I have Agent Callus down in my D section. Then moving up to C, I've got Captain Rex, and this is one that you might kind of scratch your head and go, wait a minute, he's so big in Clone Wars. But I feel like, and the other thing is, I guess what I'll point out is when it comes to the Clone Wars, is I actually dabbled in Clone Wars a little bit before watching Rebels, but largely I was going into Rebels mostly fresh. I missed Clone Wars back in the day when it came through. I think the animated thing caused me to judge it, and it was only over the years of hearing different like Star Wars podcasts and stuff telling like how great Rebels was. And then it was a thing where, you know, I was like, well, I've got to buy the DVDs to watch it then. So actually it wasn't until you got into the realm of like Disney Plus that was when I first really dove in to stream Star Wars, the Clone Wars. So and by that point Rebels had already started and stuff. So there's a lot of these characters that even though they may have been really big in the Clone Wars because of my experiences, I knew they existed in Clone Wars, but they, you know, I experienced a lot of these characters a lot more in this show, and then found them in Clone Wars later on. So it was backwards for me, but I really think that why I would put him here versus some others I didn't is because I feel like post Order 66 Rex is a very fascinating character. There's a sadness to him. There's just like a guardedness to him. And then there's like the whole element of like, you know, Kanan, which is a Jedi. So he went through Order 66 and survived, you know, so for him to then cross paths and have to work along with clones was a huge deal. And I just thought that was an amazing story, perspective. And I just thought that, you know, not elderly, like he's not like he's old, but older Rex in Clone Wars, I feel like is so much different and more distinct than the Rex. It's the same guy, but they're like, I feel like there's night and days difference. There's like the you know young soldier Rex is one kind of guy, and then this old grizzled veteran Rex that has seen all the shit, seen how the Empire came to be and how he and his people are used. I think he brings a lot to the show. So that's why he's one of the few that I brought in from a previous thing, because honestly, even if he didn't exist in Clone Wars, I do think that he would still be on this list because just what they did with him in this show was absolutely brilliant. Again, having to put him side by side with a Jedi that went through Order 66, and then the Jedi having to deal with, you know, a clone that, you know, the clones are who killed the fucking Jedi. He watched his master get killed by clones. So Rex is awesome though. And yeah, like I said, I actually, when I went back through and finally binged through all of Clone Wars, I'd already seen a good chunk of Rebels, so I already had like the it was kind of like the original Star Wars, right? You get to know the characters, then you watch the prequels, or you go back and see them younger. That's kind of almost how I did this animated stuff. I did go see the Clone Wars movie and stuff in theaters when it first hit theaters back in the day. I did see a couple episodes here and there, so I kind of whatever. It just wasn't enough to really ingrain in me though. So yeah, that is my in the C tier. I've got Rex, and then joining Rex in the C tier, I have the Grand Inquisitor, and I think he's kind of standing in for all the other Inquisitors. And the idea of Inquisitors was a new thing for Rebels. It's basically Force sensitive babies that were basically taken and then trained up by Palpatine and the Sith. I think Vader may have had a part in it as well, but the whole idea is you kind of have these underlings that have a little bit of a tie to the Force, but they're not really full on Sith. They're kind of just more disposable. And their whole purpose is to be the ones that really hunt down the Jedi. And we've obviously seen them translate. We've seen, you know, Inquisitors. We saw Merrick in Ahsoka was very reminiscent of the Inquisitors. We saw the Inquisitor in the Obi-Wan show. So ultimately they've become a big part of the idea of Star Wars, and I just love the Grand Inquisitor. He only lasted the first season, but he was it's his name, Jason Isaacs, the bad guy from Patriot, voiced him. But the Grand Inquisitor was awesome, and I feel like you know, one of the bigger additions that Rebels made to the universe was the Inquisitors. Then jumping up to the B tier, I've already mentioned him, but Kanan Jarrus, or Caleb Doom is his original name, but he changed his name to Caleb, or up to Kanan Jarrus. He's kind of like, everyone always like refers to the Ghost crew as a family, and Kanan kind of is the father figure, where Hera is the mother. He is he's not the fallen Jedi. He's a Jedi that survived Order 66. He's the one that has the problems with Rex, and he's also the one that takes up training Ezra Bridger. It's funny, the first time watching the show, I really didn't care for him much. He didn't really rub me the right way. Not that I hated him, he just wasn't. He was one of the least interesting characters to me. But on my rewatch though, he really jumped up a lot. He probably would have been, if I hadn't done that rewatch earlier this year, he probably would have been a D tier, if not maybe C tier, but probably D tier, because he just wasn't for me the first time through. But on a rewatch, holy shit, he blew me away. What a great character. And even like his reference in Ahsoka to him was incredible. I absolutely loved that. So next up in the B tier, joining Kanan, is Ahsoka Tano. And again, I know Ahsoka is massive, and I do think, again, I'm trying to keep most of this inclined to Rebels as I can. Of course, there's no way to really separate her from the Clone Wars, to separate her from the fact that she was Anakin Skywalker's apprentice. But I think that, and she's obviously growing bigger now into her own show, but Ahsoka's an incredible character. One of my favorite characters in Star Wars at this point. But yeah, her elements in Rebels were absolutely incredible. She plays Fulcrum at first. She's this hidden character that's helping the Rebel Alliance, and then she's finally revealed. And then kind of, as she kind of goes through, she ends up learning that Vader is Anakin. And then ends up having a showdown with him, and a duel with him, which is one of my favorite duels in Star Wars history, Ahsoka versus Vader. So I love Ahsoka Tano, but in the realm of Rebels, she falls right here, kind of in the middle of the curve, as in the B section. And then rounding out the B tier, I have Sabine Wren. She's obviously was also in the Ahsoka show. She was probably one of the leads in the Ahsoka show. But Sabine, she was kind of the punk rock kid that was doing the graffiti and stuff early on, but ultimately she's a Mandalorian, and she, really, I think that kind of the whole like skater, cool kid, spray paint and stuff, she eventually creates the rebel symbol, is her painting. Like she kind of, there were some elements I liked about her, some elements I didn't, but when they got into the later seasons where she kind of started dealing with the Mandalorian stuff, was some of the best shit in Rebels. So like that probably moved her from like a C or D tier character up to B, is just that all the Mandalorian stuff was absolutely incredible. And again, I'm also trying to keep this isolated from Ahsoka as well. I don't want to let the Ahsoka stuff bleed into this as well. I'm trying to keep this as much down into just what we have in Rebels as I can. But yeah, Sabine rounds out the B tier. Jumping up to A tier, this one is a big one, and again, I'm really trying to keep this isolated. But Grand Admiral Thrawn, back in the day when I read the books, Grand Admiral Thrawn was one of my favorite characters created in the expanded universe stuff. So when he showed up in Rebels, I was off the fucking charts excited. But taking all that aside and just trying to view it within the realm of the show, within the realm of this show, Grand Admiral Thrawn was absolutely incredible. They did such a great job of really pulling a lot of the great stuff that he did in the books, or the great stuff about him from the books, and moving into this character, and it really became the best villain in the entire series of Rebels. Of course, you had the Inquisitors were always there, but they were getting off. Vader showed up as a heavy hitter. So did Grand Moff Tarkin. Palpatine even shows up at one point. But all of them are kind of just like almost cameos. Maul shows up for a short stretch, but like the one that kind of I think Thrawn takes place over a couple seasons that Thrawn's there, and it just seems like he's the one that really felt like the most formidable enemy and villain of the show. So I absolutely loved what they did with him. They brought him into the actual Star Wars canon in an incredible way in Rebels. And yeah, he was incredible. Loved Thrawn. Can't wait to see more of him in the future, but for Rebels, he is the first in the A tier. Next up in the A tier is Ezra Bridger. Ezra is kind of the main character. He's who we start with. He's the one that kind of gets brought into the family, because again, I talked about earlier, Kanan is kind of the dad, Hera's the mom, but then you have Sabine and Ezra are the kids, as well as a couple others we're going to talk about. But Ezra, he can kind of be annoying. He's the young kid, so there's like, it always makes me angry because he like keeps trusting people that he shouldn't trust. But then again, that's kind of what kids do. But he's kind of in the way of like learning the Force. He's Kanan's apprentice, and then at the end he ends up making the sacrifice play. That's what led us into Ahsoka, because he used his connection to the space whales to basically destroy and beat Thrawn's fleet and send them off into the Never land, which ended up being another galaxy. So Ezra is a great character. Again, I'm really trying not to allow bias from like the Ahsoka stuff in the future. But Ezra is a great character. He's just a really fun and well done character. Then the next one, last one rounding out the A tier, is Zeb Aurelius. So again, he is from a species that was largely wiped out during the course of the show. We end up finding out there's a hidden colony of them, so he is not the last one. Early on, we think he's the last of his species. We didn't actually see him in Ahsoka. We have seen a one shot of him in Mandalorian, the last season of Mandalorian. But he's just an awesome character. I love him. He kind of has the Chewie-ish thing, but he doesn't feel like just a cheap Chewie Kmart version of Chewie, because he's very vocal. He and Ezra fight like brothers. He's the other child of the parents. But he's also just a very striking character because of his past with like a genocide and stuff. He's got like a weight to him, but he can be very silly. He's kind of like the one that likes big guns, explosives, all that kind of stuff. He's just a really fun character. I really like him quite a bit. So he rounds out the A tier, and then up to the S tier, the absolute cream of the crop, top of the top. Shouldn't be any surprise for anyone. The first one, of course, is the war criminal Chopper. I absolutely adore Chopper. It's funny because when I first watched Rebels and Chopper showed up, I kind of rolled my eyes. Oh, great. Just a fucking another, just like he's like a Kmart R2-D2. But then, like, as the show progressed, like, I started to realize, like, holy shit, no, this is not just R2-D2. Like, he is, like, almost the opposite of R2 in a lot of ways. He's very helpful, but he's very temperamental. He's very, obviously I've joked about him being a war criminal. He kills at the drop of a hat. He is a homicidal little maniac. I remember at one point later on down the road reading a thing with Dave Filoni where he said that if R2-D2 was your favorite family dog, Chopper is your family cat, and that embodies him perfectly. So absolutely adore Chopper. He may be one of my favorite droids at this point. And then to top off the S tier, wouldn't be a surprise to anyone that knows me well, but it is Hera Syndulla. Hera is my queen. She's one of my absolute favorite Star Wars characters. If I was to do a top, probably a top 20 Star Wars characters, because and that's not to talk shit on her. I mean, she may even fall into the top 10. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. But I know if I did like a top 20 with the breadth of this franchise and how wide it is, how many characters we've got, a top 20 would be a very cream of the crop list, and I would be certain that she would make it into the top 20. She's an incredible character. She's the child of Cham Syndulla, which you actually learn a lot about in the Clone Wars. I think you may see her in Clone Wars as a small child, but here in Rebels, she's the mom. You got Chopper, Zeb, Sabine, and Ezra are the kids. Kanan's the dad. Hera is his love interest. It's funny, they kind of have a flirty thing a little bit, but I remember up until the final stretch of episodes, there was a lot of debate whether they actually had a lot of romantic attachment, because they kept it very low key while the course of the show. But then at the very end, they did embrace a lot. And then at the very end, when Kanan sacrifices himself, it is to save Hera. But yeah, Hera's wonderful. She's one of my favorite characters. She's just an awesome all-around character. She's a wonderful pilot. She's a huge leader in the rebellion. Again, she's kind of the mature one. And everything about her I love. I really do. She's an incredible character. I loved what they did with her in the Ahsoka show as well. But we're just talking Rebels. She was my absolute, far and away, my favorite character the entire run of the show. I can't wait to see more of her. Obviously, what we end up finding out in the final moments of the series is Kanan and her had a child, which we actually see in Ahsoka as an older kid. I think he's like 10 or 11, 12 maybe, somewhere in that age range. But we see him as just a little toddler in the end of the finale of Rebels. So that's kind of my rundown of my, what I grabbed the 11 characters I really wanted to consider here, ranking them S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier. So that is the tier ranking for the last one for 2023. Rebels characters. So let me go ahead and move this screen back over. Oh, God dang it. Let's see. I, once again, forgot to change the damn... I was so working on all the slide stuff that I missed a couple slide things. So let's see, 2023 recap and 2024 preview is kind of what we're titling this episode. I think I've already announced that on the last episode. What is... All right, so sorry about that. Once again, having to do things on the fly here. So main topic is 2023 recap, 2024 preview. So This is actually outside of this podcast that I have always, or not always, but in the last number of years, what I've always done is kind of looked back on the year, and then generally as a movie fan, what I would do is make a list of my top 10 movies of the year. I am pretty sure this is a solid list now. But then what I do is I can collect those lists. And then what I did last decade was I think I started doing this in like 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. So I've been doing this about 10 years. And then what I did at the end of the decade is I went and grabbed all of my top 10s because I retroactively did like 2010, 2011. And then I had a top 10 for each of those years. And then what I did is at the end of the whole decade, I went and made a top 20 list of the entire decade. So this is kind of part of a larger thing. Assuming Lord willing, it's still doing this podcast come 2030. What we'll do is we'll be doing the full recap of 2020 of the 2020s movie wise, and maybe have like a top 20 movies from 2020. And so that would be pulling from these top 10 lists I make every year. So let me jump into, first I want to do TV though. So for the sake of the podcast, I wanted to talk some TV as well, but movies is how I've been what I've been doing for years. But obviously for this show, this is all things nerdery. So there's been a lot of great TV. I'm not really ranking the TV stuff like I am the movies. I just got like a list to go through of TV stuff that's been absolutely incredible this year. Loki season 2 was phenomenal. Succession, the final season was great. The animated show My Adventures with Superman was absolutely incredible. I actually did not expect that one to be all that great as a Superman fan. I was just like, whatever, a more modern Superman cartoon. I don't know if it'll be any good, but I watched it, loved it, really, really, really loved it. Thought it did a great job of Superman, so that's definitely on my list of shows I loved. Poker Face, the Ryan Johnson show, was absolutely incredible. One of my favorite shows of the year for sure. I can't wait for a new season of that. Fall of the House of Usher. Obviously, that was an incredible show. Loved the hell out of that one. And then, of course, Ahsoka. We talked about at length on this show for 4 episodes that we did Ahsoka? Either way, that was a massive show for this year. And then The Last of Us. This isn't a complete list. These are just ones that, as I kind of looked through the list of shows that came out this year, these are the ones that were kind of the cream of the crop for me. The Last of Us, it was funny because I actually forgot that even came out this year. It feels like that was 2 years ago, or last year or something, but no, that was this year. So The Last of Us was an incredible show as well. So that's kind of my TV review. But let's move on over to movies 2023. So like I said, I'm going to do a top 10 list. So what I do is, I think I've mentioned on the show before, what I do when I see movies is I track my movies all year, what I watch. So what I did is I went and pulled up that spreadsheet, filtered it out, and just to only show me 2023 movies, because I also count old movies I watch for the first time or even rewatch. I just try to record everything I watch over the course of a year, just for my own nerdery. So what I did that, and then I went through that list, and I think I've told before on the Dark Tower show, I think I've told on this show, but what I usually do when I do a top list of any kind, be it top 10 or top 20, whatever it might be, top 5, top 6, whatever. My strategy is I'll get a list of what I'm pulling from, and then I'll pull a shotgun list where I'll just grab, like for a top 10, I'll just go, kind of go through and just immediately yes or no. Would it be on the list? Yes or no. Go through that to sort through and get kind of a pile of movies. And then I don't really try to get a number. I know it's going to be higher than what I need to do. But then I have that one pile, and then from there I actually go and build my top 10 out of. And so what I'm doing here is my honorable mentions are the ones that I pulled into my kind of semi-finalist pile. But these are the ones that didn't make the cut into the top 10. Let's see. Let me number these. I wonder if not that I'm going to change it now, but okay, so there are 7 of them. So even if I was trying to wonder if I had done a top 20, if these would have made it. So these all would have made it for sure, but it wouldn't have rounded out to a full top 20. So these are the 7 movies that were part of my initial list of, yes, these are absolutely ones that could potentially be on this top 10, but these are the 7 that fell short because there's only 10 spots, not 17 spots. They are Evil Dead Rise. So the new Evil Dead movie was pretty fun, really gory, really fun, just kind of scary-ish, but I feel like it was kind of a weird thing where it mixed perfectly. Like the original Evil Dead movies kind of were like silly but grotesque, and then there was like the new one in 2013, 10 years ago now. There was that remake of the Evil Dead. That one was just like balls to the wall, hardcore horror. This one feels like it was kind of between the two, but probably leaning a little bit towards horror still. But it does spiritually still feel a lot like Evil Dead, so I really enjoyed the hell out of that movie. Next up, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This one turned out to be just a part one, which I think we all kind of knew up front that it was going to be. But I will say that probably hurt it a little bit because it was not a total movie, and that's not to say that there isn't another one on here that's a part one that may have made the top 10. But I do think that there was a part of me that it hurt this one a little bit. It's still a wonderful movie, though. Even these honorable mentions are movies I really enjoyed. Next honorable mention, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I've enjoyed all the Indiana Jones movies to one extent or another. With this one, I definitely kind of went in with low expectations because, not having Spielberg, not having Lucas, this just felt like different to me. But I think they did a good job of it. The de-aging thing was really cool. I thought it was done really well. And overall, I really enjoyed the story and the way that it progressed. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to buy it and add it to the collection behind me here, to add it into the Indiana Jones pantheon. Next up, The Exorcist Believer. That one was a fun movie. Really enjoyed it. I know it didn't get as much good reviews, but I actually really enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought they did a good job of it. It's never going to live up to the original. In fact, I also have my Captain Howdy Exorcist shirt on today because a few days. How many days ago would that be now? I think it's the day after Christmas. So, 4 or 5 days ago was the 50-year anniversary of the original Exorcist. It got released the day after Christmas, I believe, in 1973. So, just celebrated its 50 years, so I decided to give the old Captain Howdy a wear, even though I've realized with these cameras, you can't really see it as well. When it was more square, you saw more of my shirt, whereas now that it's a little bit wider screen, because it's just me on the screen, my shirts are not as visible. But yeah, I really enjoyed The Exorcist Believer. It was never going to live up to the original because what movie can really? But I thought they did a wonderful job of it doing their own thing. The way it ended was kind of brutal, and I'm really glad about that. I was worried as it was happening. I'm like, I hope that they don't cop out and just make this a happy ending. And it was like a partial happy ending, but the unhappy part of it was enough to outweigh it. It just felt wonderful. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's a horror movie. Things shouldn't always have happy endings. Next up, we got The Marvels. I really enjoyed The Marvels a lot. It's one of the comic book movies in the last couple of years, seemingly, that I had a lot of fun with. But yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot. I thought Kamala Khan's one of my favorite new characters, so she was wonderful. Everyone was wonderful in this movie. I really enjoyed it. So The Marvels is on all my honorable mentions. And then rounding out my honorable mentions, I've got the Barbie movie, which I just mentioned in the watching, reading, playing, because I just watched both of these last two that are on my honorable mentions, and it's the Barbie movie and Gran Turismo. I enjoyed the hell out of both those movies. I'm kind of bummed I didn't see either of them in theaters, but I really enjoyed both of them, so I had them in this list as a potentials to be on my top 10, but they fell just short. So Barbie, Gran Turismo, that rounds out my honorable mentions. So going into the top 10 here, so these are the actual ones. These are the ones that won the top 10. These are my top 10 movies of 2023. Let's count down and talk through them. Again, God willing, I'm still doing this podcast a long time from now. And if we're doing it in 2030, still 7 years from now, we will be reviewing what is my top 20 movies of the entire decade of the 2020s. And that will be drawing from these top 10 lists from each year. So let's dive into what 2023 gave us. 2023, number 10 was Scream 6. This is one I was kind of apprehensive about because obviously not having Wes Craven around, even though they already did one without him. I'm still on guard about that, but then with them screwing over Neve Campbell, not paying her what she's worth. So she walked, so we didn't have her. But they had the younger leads that were in the last movie in Scream 5. They did a wonderful job, went into it because of them. But this movie really fucking rocked it. The opening scene was absolutely incredible. It was just really original and awesome. But then as it goes on to, like, there's a ladder scene that's absolutely fucking one of the most tense scenes I've seen all year. As well as Gale Weathers finally getting the first call from Ghostface. This is the 6th movie in the franchise. She's been in all 6, but she has never she's not to say she hasn't run into Ghostface, because she's run into Ghostface, but she's never got a phone call from him. So pretty cool that this long into it that she's not experienced that. So Scream 6 was a wonderful movie. Highly recommend it. Still kind of unprecedented that we're this deep into this movie franchise, for a horror movie franchise especially, and we've really had no losers. They've all been wonderful movies. That's really hard to see. Horror movies are really, really famous for having a good first one and then just dropping off, and then you just kind of to diminish returns with every movie seemingly. And even with Scream 6 or with the Scream series, it's insane because, again, Wes Craven was there for the first 4, but now we've gone 2 movies beyond his life. And somehow they're still holding up the quality on them. So pretty cool to see. I've always been a big Scream fan, always will be. So Scream 6 makes number 10 on the list. Number 9 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem. This was the animated movie. I feel like they actually had real teenagers voicing the characters. They all sounded very young to me. But then again, I guess teenagers just seem younger now than they did before. But this one was really awesome. They didn't have Shredder in it. But as a fan that grew up watching like the cartoons as a kid, watched the 2 first live action movies I really loved. I've always loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I've actually fallen off. And this is the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies I've watched since the original few movies that were live action back in the day. Because it just felt like every time one had come out, something about it just didn't feel like it was for me. It felt like, it was a newer animation style, or, it was CG. There's just nothing ever really appealed to me enough to go, you know what, I'm going to go and try this out. But this one actually looked good enough where I was like, I'm going to go see this movie, and I really enjoyed the hell out of it. They did a good job with all 4 of the turtles, but they also did a good job with some different villains that we've dealt with before, as well as Splinter. They did kind of a different take on some of the characters, and I thought it was a really wonderful take on the characters. I can't wait for the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, whatever it is. I guess we don't really have a way to call it. Like, you'd say like I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff out there like that has like a franchise like this. There's really there's not like it's not like the Spider-Man where you could say the Home series, the Far From Home, Homecoming, No Way Home. They all have home in the title. There's really no way to really talk about this, but this new spin of the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, whenever the sequel comes out, I've heard the Shredder is going to be in it. That was alluded to in the post-credit scene. I cannot wait to see it because, again, as a long-time Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, this movie rocked. Next up, number 8 for the top 10 movies of 2023. I almost said 2024. John Wick Chapter 4. I've really enjoyed all the John Wick movies to one extent or another, but this movie fucking rocked. This movie was absolutely incredible. It just felt like it went hard. I really loved... oh God, I'm forgetting his name. Is it Donnie Yen? He played the blind guy in Rogue One. Let me just search Donnie Yen. I think that's him. Yes, Donnie Yen. I loved his character in it. He was like kind of going against John Wick, but they were like friendly. Bill Skarsgård was probably the best villain in the series far and away. And then the last 45 minutes of this movie was such a fucking throwback to one of my all-time favorite cult classic movies, which is The Warriors. The one about the gang, The Warriors, that has to move across New York while every gang is trying to take them out. Wonderful movie. The last 45 minutes of John Wick Chapter 4 was a huge homage to the Warriors, and that really geeked me out in the theater. So John Wick, absolutely. I honest to God think that John Wick Chapter 4 is probably my favorite of all the John Wick movies, period. So not only is it high on my list of movies for 2023, number 8 of the entire mess of movies I saw all year, it fell into my top 10, but also I'd go one step further and say it is the best John Wick movie in my opinion that they've ever done. So that was my number 8. Number 7, this is where I know where I said Spider-Man Part 1 kind of took it away from it a little bit for me, but this one did not, and this is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. These Mission Impossible movies are wonderful. I think it was this year I rewatched fuck, is this 7 or 8 of them? I think this is the 8th one or the 7th one. I watched all of them, though. I have the box set. I went through and watched them all in preparation for this movie. And this whole series just rocks. I mean, I could definitely see where 2. That's actually one that I never liked back in the day, and I did rewatch it this year for the first time since it came out in theaters in 2002, I think. And yeah, it just doesn't feel like it fits with the rest of the series very well, and it is the least best, but it's still not a terrible movie by any means. But Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 was absolutely an incredible movie. The stunts that Tom Cruise did was incredible. The story they told was great. The idea they're doing a Part 1 and a Part 2 is not necessarily my favorite choice, but it worked because I felt like this whole movie played really well, but the story that they were dealing with is just something you really couldn't resolve in one part anyway. So, and one of my favorite bits of trivia is I heard that the President of the United States saw this movie and was so freaked out by the idea of the AI stuff that he started some sort of commission to look at AI and make sure that things were whatever. I don't know what's even going to come of that or not, but I always love those stories because there was one of those about Ronald Reagan back in the day. I don't remember what movie it was. Was it War Games? There was some movie that Reagan saw and it freaked him out so much that they actually like instituted some stuff based on like the president getting scared of the movie a bit. And it's kind of funny to see the same thing happening today in 2023. The president of the United States watching Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 and wanting to put something in place to protect us from AI. So that's number 7. Again, I really enjoy it. Can't wait for the next one. And then the next, number 6 of 2023, I already mentioned it earlier. I'm watching, reading, playing. And it's the Iron Claw. I did see that the other day, but it honestly was so good that yes, I will put it at number 6. It was my 6th movie of the year in my top 10. Love the movie. I really think that Zac Efron deserves an Oscar for this movie. He did an incredible job, and again, the tail end of the movie, one of his last scenes, he has a line he was talking to his kids, and there's a line that he gave, and it just absolutely tore my heart out. Incredible acting job by him, and he put on a bunch of muscle and stuff. So for all the Academy Awards, it always seemed to really go gaga over guys that either lose a lot of weight, gain a lot of weight, gain a lot of muscle. That when it seems like whenever people do body transformation stuff, it seems like the Academy just kind of pisses their pants and goes nuts about it. So all things told, Iron Claw is really great. The one partner, what is it from Manhunter? The great show on. Let's see, what is Manhunter 20, or wait, is it Manhunter? Let's see. I'm or is it Mindhunter? Yeah, Mindhunter, not Manhunter. Holt McNally, that's his name. He's one of the partners in that show. Played the dad of these brothers in this movie, and man, what a piece of shit, man. If you're kind of one that's followed from the Dark Tower range, you kind of know Mrs. Carmody is one of the most hated characters of all time. I do think in the Iron Claw, the dad, played by Holt McNally, might kind of fall into that same realm of one of the more hated characters in the history of film, because he is a fucking dastardly motherfucker, and he did a great job in the role. So huge props to him in the whole movie. So that's number 6. Number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This one absolutely just killed it. It had so much heart. I always joke, if I had tear ducts, it would have made me cry. Of course, that's a reference to a Star Trek movie. I forget which one, but there's the one where they're talking. Oh, it's Undiscovered Country, number 6, because they're talking about an assassination, and they talk about the daughter of the guy that's assassinated. Like, oh, she didn't cry, and Spock's like, well, of course, Klingons don't have tear ducts. So I always, whenever I make reference to that, that's where it ultimately comes from, is Star Trek 6. But Guardians Volume 3, it's so interesting because Guardians of the Galaxy as a whole came in as just an outside thing. I remember back in the day when they announced that Guardians of the Galaxy was coming out, the original one, I remember thinking to myself, like, I kind of know who Guardians of the Galaxy are in the comics. I've never read a comic, but I kind of know vaguely who they are, because the one that always stuck with me is, like, I kind of knew it's like they're the ones that have like a tree and a raccoon in their team. And I just remember thinking, like, oh, well, that would be Marvel's first miss, because it just seems like there's no way that you are going to be able to get audiences to buy into characters like this that are this obscure and stuff. But honestly, when it came out over the course of 2019 and 2018, when we were getting to like the Infinity War and Endgame era, I remember in the theaters when they were showing trailers for those movies, as well as the movies themselves, whenever you saw the Guardians of the Galaxy show up, people responded in the theater. People would cheer, people would clap, and I'm not even talking in the movie, but I'm talking in the trailers. I remember the first trailer of what was Infinity War, the first trailer that showed the Guardians. Like, I heard people audibly react, like, and that's when I started to realize, like, oh my God, the Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the most popular sets of characters in the entire MCU. And that really is a credit to James Gunn and the amazing work that he's done with this series. And this third movie was just the cherry on top of the entire sundae. We go really deep into Rocket Raccoon's backstory, which is an incredible tale. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful movie. Just a perfect perfect third movie to a wonderful two movies. Like, I would have to say this would be an interesting one to debate at some point is, trilogies. And I do think that this one stands up there with some of the greatest trilogies of all time. And if we were to do like a top 10 trilogies, which is actually an idea I have on my list that we will cover at some point, I would be hard pressed to think that that doing a top 10 would not equate Guardians of the Galaxy being on that top 10 trilogies of all time. I don't know. I haven't done the work yet, but if I did, I have a high feeling that it would be really hard to see it not be on there. Number 4 is Killer of the Flower Moon. This is the new Martin Scorsese movie with Robert De Niro, with Leonardo DiCaprio. Just a very somber movie in a lot of ways, but just a well done movie. It's just a sad movie because you've got this native tribe that owns all this oil land and stuff, but the way the laws work, they white people can marry the women and then they get the inheritance from them, and then basically these women start to die under mysterious circumstances after they've married white men, because these white men have basically taken the rights, got it through marriage, and then the wife mysteriously dies, and then now they're the sole owners of this oil land, some chunks of the oil land. So very, very disturbing movie, very sad, heartbreaking, but just so wonderfully written, so wonderfully acted, so wonderfully shot. Scorsese, I don't want to say he's at the height of his powers, because he's been at the height of his powers for 40 something years now, but it just seems like the dude just can't miss everything. It seems like everything he does is just incredible. So really enjoyed Killer of the Flower Moon. Great acting jobs all around, and just a wonderful movie. Number 3, getting down to the nitty gritty here. Number 3, of course, horror movie. Tad is not going to allow there not to be some more horror movies, and this one is number 3 is Talk to Me. This is one that came out of nowhere for me. I remember seeing the trailers for it. It has like the creepy hand, and then the kids hold the hand and then say, let me in, or whatever, or I let you in, whatever it is. And then there's like shit happens and stuff, and it's just a wonderful horror movie. I expected it to be like mediocre, but I walked out and I was blown away. It's one of my favorite horror movies of the last number of years. Just wonderfully well done, just brilliantly done. Can't wait for a sequel. The whole thing, it was so well acted. I loved the characters. I felt for the characters, and then as things happen to them, it was just done so well. I feel like that's what really is missing usually between like mediocre horror and great horror, is really caring for the characters, because a lot of times you go into a horror movie knowing a lot of characters are going to get taken out, so you it seems like lazy filmmakers kind of get two-dimensional characters that are just there to fill basic roles. They're just stereotypical characters. With Talk to Me, I felt like there was a bunch of characters that I really empathized with, that I connected with. They were 3D. They all had different aspects of their personalities and stuff, and it was just a wonderfully well done movie. And then number 2, this one is number 2 for 2023. It is Godzilla -1. I've already talked about it a bit for the watching, reading, listening a few episodes ago. I went and saw this because I've always kind of liked kaiju movies, giant monster movies, Godzilla, King Kong, that kind of stuff. Pacific Rim back in the day was really great. But I remember seeing on Twitter, all the filmmakers and film people I follow. I was just started to see there was so much buzz about this movie. I'm like, all right, well, all people. I mean, I even seen people saying like, this is one of the best movies of the year. This isn't just a good Godzilla movie. So I was like, that kind of stuff was enough to attract me to go watch this. And I did go and see it, and it is indeed I would say it's probably my favorite Godzilla movie ever made. And it is the second best movie of the year for me. It was so incredibly well done. Kind of like Talk to Me. The characters, be it the main characters or the side characters, they were all so relatable. They all kind of had their own, their own reasons, their own, drives, their own motivations, their own everything. They all just felt like real people. And then Godzilla is not a fucking hero in this movie. I know over the years Godzilla has become a little bit more of a hero where he's fighting some larger evil to save humans. This one he's not. He's just coming in and wrecking shit and ruining people's lives, killing people, and just it's so wonderful. It's one of the first times I've ever saw a Godzilla movie that I was scared of Godzilla because he was actually played in a horrifying way. But it was just a wonderful, wonderful movie. And in retrospect, I ended up finding out after seeing it that the movie only cost, I don't even know what it cost. The rumor was coming out there that it cost only $15 million, which is so insanely cheap. When you got a bunch of movies this year that they spent $200, $300, $400, $500 million on, and the movies flopped hard. For this movie that, cost what they were saying allegedly was $15 million, but then to look as good as it did, and then also to be a period piece set in the 1940s, there's no way. Like, I never would have guessed walking out of it that it had a lower budget, because it looked fine. It looked wonderful. They did a great job with it. So when I jumped online and started looking around and saw someone say it was $15 million, like my jaw hit the floor. But then I also saw a quote from the director where he said 15 million. God, I wish we had that much. So apparently it was made on even less than $15 million. So absolutely incredible. Certainly one of my favorite movies of the year. It was so wonderfully well done. I can't wait to see it again. In fact, here, I don't know what the rest of the next couple of days look like before I have to go back to work. But I do, if it's still in theaters here for too long, I would definitely consider going to see it again. And then number 1 for 2023 for me is Oppenheimer. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. If you know me, even in the slightest bit, I'm a huge fan of history. Christopher Nolan's one I've always kind of enjoyed, but I love history. I love World War II, and one of my biggest fascinations since I was a kid has been nuclear weapons, because I totally blame that on Terminator 2. That nuclear scene in Terminator 2 was just blew me away as a kid. It blew my mind. And I think that I've always been fascinated with nuclear weapons, and that is the primary reason for it. So because of that, I got into the history of the true, nuclear weapons. And through that, I've, come to know who J. Robert Oppenheimer was. He's always been kind of a historic character that I've always liked. He's an interesting character. So, I don't know. I remember loving. There was some cool quotes from him, some interviews back in the day. In fact, at one point I got a pork pie hat, which is what he wears. It was always funny because then it was around the time too that Breaking Bad was the thing, and that he wears a pork pie hat in that. And I remember people always saying, "Oh, not Oppenheimer. Oh, Heisenberg." I'm like, no, Oppenheimer, American. And nobody ever got it. Now they probably would, but they didn't then. They were just like, what? And I was just like, yeah, I wear it because Oppenheimer is one of my, small heroes in history. I love scientists are always awesome, and Oppenheimer is a scientist for one of my favorite. I'm not the same favorite because not the nuclear weapons are good, obviously, but they're a fascination to me. And yeah, Oppenheimer. So. Love him as a human being. I've studied him a lot. I've read some books on him. Never read the one that the movie was based off of until after watching the movie. But I remember a couple years or so ago when they announced that Christopher Nolan's next movie was going to be Oppenheimer. I remember just kind of like wanting to jump out of my chair and just hop up and down with my hands above my head in victory, because it was like, wait a minute, Christopher Nolan, a filmmaker that seems to come out with these wonderful movies all the time, is now going to do a movie about Oppenheimer. Like, I just felt like it was tailor-made for me. like, because like I kind of knew the gist of Oppenheimer's story, and it's just like I assumed it was going to be primarily him building the atomic bomb, and I was partially right because it is mostly about, it was that in tandem, it's both looking at his building the atomic bomb in the Manhattan Project, but then it's like cross-cut with his being persecuted by the American government for his beliefs and his political beliefs. With all of that, tying that whole movie together, what it ended up being was incredible. But I remember just being excited for it. There's just a couple things in history I'm really nerdy about. It was kind of like a few years ago, Chernobyl. It's another thing I've always been fascinated by. I know that's not nuclear bombs, but it's nuclear power, and I've always been fascinated by the destruction and the accident in Chernobyl since I was a kid. I remember being in like freaking like junior high and just being like going to the library and reading about Chernobyl and stuff like, and this is like not necessarily before the internet, but before the internet was as widely used. I mean, I remember even reading up on it on the internet back in the early days of the internet. So I was always stoked by that. So way back when a few years ago when HBO announced that one of the shows they were working on was called Chernobyl, I was just like circle it on my fucking on everything, where I'm like, cool, something I've always been fascinated by. And then it turned out to be one of the best fucking things ever recorded on television. I didn't know it would be that good, but I was fascinated by it because it was just a topic I'm interested in, and kind of that was the way Oppenheimer was. And then the movie just did such an incredible job. I mean, the top to bottom, the cast in this movie is great. The way it was shot, to have some of it in black and white, some of it in color. There's a lot of actors doing some wonderful things across the board. And just the jumping around in time is another thing I really like. I really enjoyed that in Dunkirk, which is another World War II one that Christopher Nolan did. Because in that one, he didn't even necessarily let you know up front it was happening, because you're just cross-cutting between these three different things. But then as the movie progresses, you realize that like one of them is taking place over the course of like a couple hours, another one's like a couple days, and another one's like a little bit longer. And so you don't realize they're all telling the same story, but then only at the very end you realize like, holy shit, wait, I'm seeing like things from all different time periods or whatever. And so with him doing that kind of shit, I remember just absolutely adoring that. So then when this movie came out and I saw it for the first time, I remember seeing like, oh, we're jumping around in time a lot, like this is actually really cool. I just love that element of like non-linear storytelling is an interesting thing to me. And I'm so nerdy, I was like, every time a scientist would show up, knowing the story as well as I did as a history fan, every time they just had like a small character in the background where they referenced the guy's name, I kind of geeked out, because I kind of knew, oh, that's the dude that will eventually do X, Y, and Z, or that's the dude that, whatever, like just because I've read some stuff on a number of things on Oppenheimer over the years. I was kind of the one, it's like like the geeky, Marvel people that geek out about some background character that gets called a certain name and they're like, oh my God, that's this obscure comic book character. I was doing the same thing with these nuclear physicists watching this movie. And also, I cannot talk about Oppenheimer without talking about the amazing score by oh God, I just blanked. It's not Hans Zimmer, because Hans Zimmer betrayed Christopher Nolan. Not really, I'm just joking. Let's see, Oppenheimer composer Ludwig Göransson. That I don't know why I was blanking on his name. But yeah, so Hans Zimmer is the regular Christopher Nolan composer, but he is overdoing the Dune movies because he has a lifelong fandom of the Dune franchise. Ludwig did such an incredible job. I've listened to this score, probably one of the most things I've listened to this year. I actually just got my I got a vinyl version of Oppenheimer. I was a little bit bummed when it first dropped, because there's this company that does these, and they do these special printings, and they ran out, and so I was really bummed. I didn't want to just buy it normal. I wanted one of these special ones, and then they ended up restocking, so I got one to show it off here. Like, hopefully the light doesn't, whatever, but it's like pressed with like red, yellow, orange, so it looks kind of fiery. I always love vinyls that do something interesting with the vinyl, or if it's not just a black vinyl, but if it's colored or designed in some way, it's really cool. So when I saw that finally available again, I thought I'd missed out, because this company does a lot of exclusive things where they'll do like 1,000 of something and then they'll move on, and then they won't ever do any more. But I got an alert that they restocked these, so I went and bought one very quickly. But yeah, got the Oppenheimer soundtrack. I've listened to it a ton on streaming, but I also have it on vinyl. I've actually yet to drop the needle on it, so it's unplayed on vinyl up to this point. But I just haven't had a lot of time to listen to vinyl stuff recently. So that is my list. I'll go through it one more time. Number 1 was Oppenheimer. 2 was Godzilla -1. Number 3 was Talk to Me. Number 4 is Killer of the Flower Moon. Number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Number 6 was The Iron Claw. Number 7, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Number 8 was John Wick Chapter 4. Number 9, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. And number 10, Scream 6. That is my top 10 movies for 2023. So let's jump on over to previews 2024. So that's the other part of it. Is I think I've talked about it before. One of my favorite things I do this time of year, between Christmas and New Year's, for a number of years now, I've made it my tradition to take this whole week off, so that basically I get kind of a 12-something day chunk of time off. So like I always plan this as being one of my vacations. I do one in the summer and then this one here. And one of my favorite things to do is I always go and audit my movie collection to make sure that everything's still there, make sure I haven't lost anything, to make sure my list I'm running off of is up to date. Every once in a while I forget to put one on the list or whatever. I always do that, but I also go through and look at the upcoming movie calendar for the next year, and then I create a movie hit list. There's no chance I'm going to see everything I put on my list, but it's kind of one of those things that gives me an idea of what's coming for the year. So the first thing, and this is only for movies, but I did, just like before on the last thing we talked about, 2023, I did also go through and look at what TV shows are coming this year, and I have a little bit of a list. They're just not ranked the same way that I've got a ranking for the movies. So the TV shows I'm looking forward to in 2024, Crystal Lake, coming to Peacock. It is a TV show based on Jason Voorhees, the serial killer. It's being done by Brian Fuller, which is the genius that did Hannibal. It is also the genius that did Hannibal that is also doing the new Christine movie. And also this is being done by A24 Studios. So there's a lot of things going for this right. Jason has been tied up in lawsuits for almost a decade, I think now. I think 2009 they had that movie, and ever since then we've not seen anything Jason come out, and that is primarily because there's been big lawsuits going on, and the honestly got to the point where it was almost looking like Jason may cease to exist and there wouldn't be any more new ones because the rights were divided up between different people or whatever. That finally got resolved, and one of the first projects to come out of it here is this show, Crystal Lake. So really excited for that. Next up is Marvel's Echo. I'm looking forward to this. Echo showed up in the Hawkeye show. I've always loved the character Echo in the comics. She's like the adopted daughter of Kingpin. We saw her shoot Kingpin in the eye in Hawkeye. The Echo trailer's out now, so it's no secret that he survived that. She's deaf. I cannot wait to see Echo. I've always loved her, and I think that we'll see some really cool stuff in her show, I think. So next up, on the other side of the tracks, we got the DC side. We got the Penguin show coming out, allegedly with Colin Farrell. I still don't believe that's actually Colin Farrell that was in The Batman playing the Penguin, but Penguin's getting his own spin-off show, and that is coming to HBO Max this year. Another one that I actually only know of because they've actually showed some trailers for it at my movie theater, and it's one called Shogun. I think it's on FX, and it's just about I don't even know. It just looks like it's almost like a historical epic set in I don't want to say feudal Japan, but set in Japanese in the year 1600s. Lord Yoshio Toranga is fighting for his life when a mysterious ship is found marooned in a nearby village, is the thing that FX says. So it just looks like a really cool epic historic thing based in Japan. I know Hiroyuki Sanda, which played Scorpion in the new Mortal Kombat, is in it. I am looking forward. He's the Lord that I mentioned on that synopsis. So that looks really cool. I'm looking forward to that. I don't have cable, so I'll have to see if there's any way to stream that. But that's actually one I would be interested in seeing. Next one, True Detective Night Country. This one I'm really excited about. True Detective Season 1 is incredible. Season 2 is one of the worst things I've ever seen. I would never recommend it to anyone. I always tell people watch True Detective. Watch True Detective Season 1. Skip Season 2. Never watch it. Go to Season 3, which they redeemed themselves. They did a good job with that one. I'm hoping we're on the right track to have another good TV series with this one, Night Country. This one is starring Jodie Foster, set in Alaska. So I am like, sign me the fuck up, because Jodie Foster is amazing and Alaska is a wonderful place. Looking forward to that. And then Masters of the Air is coming next month. That is the new Spielberg and Hanks World War II show. Kind of the third in the Band of Brothers series. Not that they're like directly connected, but the World War II series. I think this only has 9 episodes instead of 10 like the other two. But it's coming to Apple TV Plus. I'm looking forward to it. Cannot wait to see what we have in store there. And then the last one I have for TV previews for this upcoming year is House of the Dragon Season 2. I really enjoyed House of the Dragon quite a bit. I am looking forward to Season 2 as it ended in kind of a really cool way, kind of on a cliffhanger-ish thing. I can't wait to see what more this show has to show me, because so far this first season absolutely killed it. I do know there's a lot of other really cool things that people are anticipating. There's some stuff I've not seen yet, like The Bear. There's some other stuff that has some more seasons. So I think there's a lot of TV on the horizon next year. But these are the ones I've circled right now, having not started a lot of shows that are really hyped right now. So that is the TV preview for 2024. And then my honorable mentions, I did the same thing as the other one. I made a list, and then I make the top 10, and then the ones that fell short are on my honorable mentions. My honorable mentions are 6 of them. So, all right. So the first one is Night Swim. That one there's already a trailer for. It's a horror movie coming out next month, I think. The trailer looks really spooky, with a couple playing Marco Polo in the pool, and then something else is in the pool. Looks pretty creepy and scary. Hopefully it's really a really fun horror movie. It's always nerve-wracking to me when a horror movie comes out in January, because sometimes they bury movies there that they know just suck. But whatever, it looks decent. I'll go see it. Next one, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is the next in the whole series, the Planet of the Apes, the modern Planet of the Apes movies. Honestly, the other ones, everything they've done with the Planet of the Apes series since in this new century. I mean, that's not to say the classic ones aren't great in their own way, but all the ones that have been done in the 2000s have been absolutely fucking incredible. So I'm looking forward to that one to see if we continue on with another wonderful installment for Planet of the Apes. The next one is the Bike Riders. Just saw a trailer for this one, but I actually found it on my little list before I saw the trailer. It's one about, I think it's maybe a true story. It says, over the course of a decade, Midwestern motorcycle club evolves from a gathering place for local outsiders to a sinister gang threatening the original group's way of life. This has Austin Butler in it, Tom Hardy, Norman Reedus. And the one that really got me is Michael Shannon. I am, of course, a unabashed fanboy of Michael Shannon. But the trailer looked really good. Can't wait to see what this movie has for me a little bit later in the year. Next one is Alto Knights. This one is the director is the guy that did like Rain Man. And oh god, I'm forgetting what else. He's been around for a long time, and he's done a lot of movies. What's his name? Barry Levinson. Kind of like I said, a dude that's been around for a long time. Yeah, Rain Man, Bugsy, Wag the Dog, Wizard and Lies. He's got a shitload of movies, but he's doing this one called Alto Knights with Robert De Niro. And then I don't know if anybody else really matters, because it's a gangster movie and you got Robert De Niro. That's usually a good way to go. But it is, the synopsis is Vito Genovese and Frank Costello, a pair of Italian Americans who run 2 separate crime families in the mid-20th century. Genovese attempts to assassinate Costello in 1957, although Costello retired from the mob. So, I don't know, just another mob movie. I'm a sucker for mob movies. De Niro's in it. Looks interesting, so that is one of my honorable mentions. Beetlejuice 2, also an honorable mention. I need to rewatch Beetlejuice. I haven't seen that one in probably I don't know, 25 years, 30 years. But I remember, I mean, for one, I was a really, really young kid when the first Beetlejuice, I think either came out or I saw it on VHS. It scared the shit out of me as a little kid, really, really little kid. Like before I watched horror movies, this is probably when I was like 3 or 4, something like that. But I ended up watching it a little bit later in life, and it was great. But it is Everyone is back. I mean, you've got Tim Burton is directing, Catherine O'Hara, Michael Keaton, Willem Dafoe, Winona Ryder, but also adding Jenna Ortega. So the whole crew is back to make a Beetlejuice sequel. Can't wait for that, as well as the last one to round out the honorable mentions. I got Gladiator 2. Ridley Scott revisiting the Gladiator story, doing a sequel on it. So can't wait to see what that is. So then jumping into my top 10, we'll just go through these real quick. So the first one is Mickey 17. This is Bong Joon-ho, which he is the brilliant director who did Parasite. This is his next movie, and the synopsis for it says, a disposable employee is sent on a human expedition to colonize the ice world Niflheim. After one iteration dies, a new body is regenerated with most of his memories intact. So we're talking some sci-fi stuff here. Feels very maybe dystopian. I'm there. I mean, Bong Joon-ho is enough to pull me in alone. But then you add to it that it's like a dystopian sci-fi story. Yeah, sign me the fuck up. Number 9. This one is called, and the title pulled me in, and then I read the synopsis. I'm like, yes, this sounds fucking amazing. It's the American Society of Magical Negroes, and this is, of course, that's a reference to the magical Negro trope, which we've actually talked about a lot on the Dark Tower show because of Mother Abigail, John Coffey. There's a couple things, sadly, in Stephen King's realm that get fallen into that. The whole trope is basically you have this black person that is magical in some way, but they are basically use their magic for is to make it easier for a white person. It's one that's been called out a lot over the years with film, television, cartoons, like all over the place. But this film sounds incredible because first the name I was like, wait, what? But then I read the synopsis as a comedy about a young man, Aaron, who is recruited into a secret society of magical black people who dedicate their lives to a cause of the utmost importance, making white people's lives easier. So this just feels to me like a very snarky, satire, and just sign me the fuck up. Like I said, the title alone, I was like, I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be something like offensive. Just reading the title, that kind of felt like the title alone gave me the vibe of what the movie would be. Then I read the synopsis. I'm like, yep, exactly what I thought it would be. So it basically just feels like it's going to be a very tongue-in-cheek thing, just poking in the eye of this trope in a way. But I almost wonder if I haven't seen a trailer or anything, but I wonder if it'll be something kind of like what's it called, Kingsman, where you got the secret society and stuff. I just hope it's like played up that way, but done in a humorous fashion. But again, it's a bunch of black folks who are magical, and their whole purpose is to make white people's lives easier. So I always love those kind of things, because whenever a film really like tries to examine whether it's trying to examine filmmaking, because this trope is heavy in in film, but it's also in literature. It's all over the place. It's not just in film, but it is in film. So I always love when films can like examine the medium of film, and I can't wait to see a comedic take on this trope. Sounds really fun. Next one, number 8, Alien Romulus. So this is set between the first 2 Alien movies. The plot is completely under wraps, but a new Aliens movie, I am there. That is number 8, Alien Romulus. Number 7, Drive Away Dolls. This one is, the synopsis says, in the search of a fresh start, 2 women embark on an impromptu road trip to Tallahassee, Florida. However, things quickly go awry when they cross paths with a group of inept criminals along the way. I've seen the trailer for this. It looks really fun. This is unfortunately not the Coen brothers, because they have still not come back together. They both split, not in like a bad way, but I think they both just wanted to go do their own things for a bit. And they, like, one of them has been making individual movies, and this is the same thing. One of the Coen brothers is making this movie, and it looks, the trailer, I mean, once I saw Coen on there, I was like, I'm down. But then so I saw the trailer a little bit later after seeing the poster, and yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. So that's my number 7. Number 6, Love Lies Bleeding. This one is by Rose Glass. And so I actually wrote down my I have both the synopsis, but I also have my little note. After Saint Maud, which is what Rose Glass did previously, I will basically watch anything that she does, but the trailer looks great as well. And the synopsis is: Lou is a reclusive gym manager who falls hard for Jackie, an ambitious bodybuilder who is headed to Las Vegas to pursue her dreams. Their love soon leads to violence as they get pulled deep into the web of Lou's criminal family, who the criminal family is headed by a long, wiry-haired Ed Harris. So that, yeah, there's a lot going on here that looks wonderful. Rose Glass is incredible. Saint Maud was brilliant. I'll watch anything that she does for a while. But then the trailer looked really compelling, and Ed Harris playing kind of a scummy person sounds wonderful as well. Number 5, Imaginary. Got a horror movie here. Wait, did I already have a horror movie? Mickey 17. No, this is the first horror movie. Crazy. Number 5, Imaginary. The synopsis on this: when Jessica moves back in with her childhood home with her family, her youngest stepdaughter Alice develops an eerie attachment to a stuffed bear named Chauncey. She finds it in the basement. Alice starts playing games with Chauncey that begin playful but become increasingly sinister. As Alice's behavior becomes more and more concerning, Jessica intervenes only to realize Chauncey is much more than a stuffed toy bear that she believed him to be. This one, the trailer was fucking awesome. It looks so incredible. I think I saw it with the Godzilla -1. I cannot wait for this movie. It looked terrifying in the best kind of way. I can't wait. This looks wonderful. It's like basically evil imaginary friends type stuff. So looking forward to that. Number 4, Nosferatu. This is actually coming out Christmas Day 2024. And this is by Robert Eggers. So Robert Eggers, which is of course God, I'm just blanked. Pull this up. So it's got Willem Dafoe, Aaron Taylor-John, Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård. Anybody else that really jumped out at me? And then so you got kind of a stacked cast. You got Robert Eggers, which of course did The Lighthouse. He did The Witch. He did The Northman. He's done a lot of wonderful things. I cannot wait to see what his take is on Nosferatu, the vampiric, legally not Dracula but almost Dracula character. Number 3, Furiosa. This is the follow-up to Mad Max Fury Road. It is a prequel that is telling us the story of Furiosa's backstory. I love Mad Max across the board, but George Miller absolutely crushed it with Mad Max Fury Road. I believe Mad Max Fury Road for the entire last decade, when I did that top 20 I told you guys about previously, I believe Mad Max Fury Road was in my top 3. It was basically one of the 1, 2, or 3. I don't remember where it ranked, but it was one of my absolute favorite movies in the entire last decade. So George coming back to this franchise once more, sign me the fuck up, or as Mr. Gumbo would say,
just hook it to my veins.
Looking forward to this one quite a bit. Mad Max, awesome. Also can't wait because I know that he's also talked about there is after Furiosa, he's got another Mad Max idea, so I can't wait to see more from this franchise. Next up, number 2, my second most anticipated movie of the year is Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 is coming out March 1st. I absolutely can't wait. We already should have had that movie out. It should have come out in October. Strikes push it off. Looking forward to it. The first movie was incredible. Denis Villeneuve did an incredible job. Everyone's done an incredible job. I can't wait to see Dune Part 2, which is finishing out the rest of the first book. And then I think Denis Villeneuve's idea is to do one more movie, and that'll be the Dune trilogy. So the first one was so good. I cannot wait for Part 2. Just saw the trailer over the last couple days when I went and saw these couple movies. I went and saw Dune trailer play with both movies, and both times it looked incredible. The trailers look great. I cannot wait for this fucking movie. And then number 1, I already tipped my hand. Number 1 is Deadpool 3, our only MCU movie of 2024. I'm not as big a Deadpool fan as some people, but I do enjoy Deadpool. It's a wonderfully well made, and I'm really intrigued as to how this all works. I believe my theory is going in, Deadpool is going to be a Fox movie, but coming out he'll be an MCU character. I think in the course of that movie, the fourth wall will be broken in a way, and we're going to basically see him gather up people, or even just himself alone will end up crossing over from Fox movie to Marvel MCU movie. I don't know what it looks like, but we know that Wolverine's in it. There's a lot of leaks, unfortunately. I've seen some of the leaks, not all the leaks, but there's some really cool shit that seems like that's on the docket. It is the only movie that's going to carry MCU for 2024, and I am fucking stoked for it because the first two movies are incredible. Not only funny, but they both had some heart to them too. I feel like they're kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy in that way, but just different filmmakers. So that is my number one, Deadpool 3. So that is my top 10 anticipation list for 2024. Again, I'll go through them one more time like I did with my other list. So my top 10 most anticipated movies, Deadpool 3 is number 1, Dune Part 2 is number 2, Furiosa is number 3, Nosferatu is number 4, Imaginary is number 5, Love Lies Bleeding is number 6, Drive-Away Dolls number 7, Alien Romulus number 8, The American Society of Magical Negroes number 9, and Mickey 17 number 10. Those are my 10 most anticipated movies going into 2024. Of course, there might be some movies that crop up out that either maybe I didn't interest me, the title didn't grab me, or the synopsis didn't grab me. But then when I see a trailer, it will grab me. There may be movies that get delayed. That happens to me on these lists sometimes when I make my hit lists. It's just the way it works, unfortunately. So hopefully all 10 of these come out. But if not, we'll see. If any other movies come up that become, enter my list, we'll definitely talk about them. But that's kind of what it's looking like. I will say I'm a little bit depressed because this year is 2024 is not looking super great. So I will just pull up my hit list because, again, what I do is I go through a few websites I have that kind of just show all the movies that are on the docket, and I just write them all down. And so let's see, in 2019 I got 52 movies. 2020 I got 71. Of course, each of these is like let's see. Actually, is that? Yeah, so 2020, obviously, I had 71 movies circled. Of course, almost none of those movies came out because of COVID. And then 2021, do I not have 2021? Was I so down because of COVID I didn't even do this exercise? Maybe that's, I guess so. So I guess I didn't do 2021. Then 2022 I had 68. 2023 was 64. So you kind of have in that 60 to 70 realm. 2024, sadly, this is going to be a light year. There's only 41 movies I had circled overall. So it's the lightest year since I've been doing this. So it just feels like there's not as many movies coming out this year as we would generally have. And there's a number of movies I didn't put on my list because I'm just not interested in them. That's totally a thing too. If there's something that you're super excited about that I didn't mention, also there's some stuff I'm still excited for. Like I said, there's 41 movies I circled as ones I'm excited to see, and I only covered 10 of my top 10 plus 6 honorable mentions. So only 16 of the 41 got mentioned. So there's a lot of others that made my list that we didn't talk about here, but there's also some stuff that people will be really excited for this upcoming year that I'm just not interested in, so they didn't make my list. But it just feels like this year is a little bit light compared to other years because whether it be, I think just the log jam of the strikes, I think maybe some stuff got delayed out into 2025. We covered some of them on this show, so I know that's a fact. As well as some productions that got shut down and or slowed down because of the strikes. So there's some stuff that was probably intended for 2024 that's now moving to 2025. So right when we were getting over the log jam that 2020 caused, it seems like we got another log jam because of the strikes. So unfortunately, next year might be a little bit lighter than it usually is, which is sad. But there is some really cool stuff that I'm looking forward to for sure. So yeah, that is 2024. I guess the other thing I forgot to mention at the top of the show, but I'll mention it now because we're going to talk about the next episode. Is when it comes to, so I still gotta play with the scheduling a little bit to figure out what's going to work best. So what my plan is we're going to start the show back up because I always have to figure out the shows because doing the bi-weekly thing, there is a magical thing where if you plug it into 1 week, we basically with the every other week we miss every holiday. For some reason they all line up that way. It's kind of interesting. So I had to go through and figure out, do we start on like the 6th, the 13th, whatever. It turns out it'll be the 13th we're starting, but for this show I'm going to test it in January. So we're going to call it the 12th for the next episode, January 12th at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. I will get those put onto YouTube soon, but that is when we'll be back to start 2024. is the 12th. And the topic for that show will be, let me change the slide. I am going to jump into the top 10 genre-wise. And then I'm going to start off right at the top alphabetically, and that is top 10 action movies. So that'll be the main topic for the first episode of 2024. And I'm not going to go through and do like all the genres in a row. I'm going to disperse them out through with different topics. But that will be the topic for the next episode, is top 10 action movies of all time. And then let's see, let me pull up my my ideas list. So the genres as I have them, or I guess I can just pull up my little movie thing. So I know there's a lot of like genres, and genres can be like way stretched out. There's also a bunch of subgenres. For me, I define the genres as action movies, comedy movies, and I don't really consider this a full-on genre, but I do it for my own cataloging as comic book movies. I may actually keep that as its own genre because it does feel like they are so wide and broad now that I feel like that might actually be worth just considering a genre now. Documentaries, dramas, family movies, horror movies, musicals, sci-fi, and western. Those are as I generally define it. That's the genres as I define them. So over the course of the next year, maybe more, I assume maybe we'll get through all the genres in 2024. But like I said, I'm not going to go through, and we're not going to do genres one after the other. I'm gonna break them up and do some different things. But that will be next episode, which is again January 12th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. If you want to join live, that will be covering top 10 action movies, as well as whatever news breaks between now and then. But that is it for this episode. Happy New Year to everyone. Hope y'all have had a good 2023. Of course, we launched this podcast in 2023, very early on in 2023, as a matter of fact. Let's see, episode 1 was February 11th. So, basically outside of January, we started this episode in March, or in February, I'm sorry. So this whole year, this show is obviously it was unfortunate that Peter's job changed and he had to drop out for a bit. Hopefully we can get him back at some point. But overall, this show, I feel like it was good because I think we really got our footing before that happened. So I feel like I'm confident with what this show is and what it'll be going forward. But yeah, if you want to email the show, let me get that up on the screen. Email the show at tadd at geekeryabides.com. If you want to email the show, give me some feedback on what I'm talking about here. Tell me, show ideas. If you have show ideas, anything you want to do, any be part of the conversation. That's always been a big part of the Dark Tower Palaver, and it is a big part of this show as well. I want listeners to be involved as much as possible, especially now that I'm alone. I mean, even if Peter were still here, I'd be saying the same thing. Audience engagement is one of my favorite aspects of podcasting, but especially now that I'm alone, I do appreciate any engagement. So send me emails. Or join in live chats if you can. But that is the email tadd at geekeryabides.com. And then again, next time on, which actually, it's funny because it actually worked out the same as last year. I know the Dark Tower show, we've been going for a while. So it's funny, over the years, the Dark Tower show, sometimes it was like, most of the time there was some sort of like weird break where it didn't line up properly, where we had to keep moving things around. But the last 2022 going into 2023, it worked out to where it was exactly just a 2-week break, kind of like nothing stopped. We just kept going, and it all lined up perfectly. The same thing's happening here. So we're actually a fortnight from now. Technically, not exactly, because we're not recording the day we should have been recording because of my internet issues. But basically, here on the 12th, so just shy of a fortnight, we'll be back recording, live streaming, and jumping into 2024. Let's hit it hard and enjoy the fuck out of what it has for us on the realm of geekery. So I'll sign off, as I always do, by saying, love what you love. To hell with anyone that has a problem with what you love. Let your geek flag fly high, and have a happy new year. The applause isn't for me, it's for all of us getting through the year, going into the new year, applauding the new year. Don't want that to sound like I'm like giving myself an applause, but to everyone, see you guys, and have a happy and safe new year, and see you on the 12th for the next live stream. See you guys.